Good morning. Great to be here. This is one of my favorite events. The whole Redbird crew really does put on an amazing event. So thanks for having me. Honored to be here. And I think it's a great time to talk about the flight training industry. It's never a bad time to talk about the flight training industry, in my opinion. But I think there's a few reasons why now is maybe particularly good for this group to step back and think about a few things. I was with a friend over the weekend. I've known him a long time. And we have one firm rule, which is no politics. And I cannot recommend that rule enough. But he couldn't help himself. We were sitting down and he said, whew, what a week, right? I mean, the headlines and the ups and downs. And I paused a minute and I said, you know, Brian, you obviously don't work in aviation. Because that's just another day at the office, the ups and downs of aviation. We've been through a lot over the years, and just recent years. So I think we may be at kind of a new phase in flight training. I'd like to at least explore that theme this morning. If you think about all the things that have gone on, airline pilot hiring cycle, it's been down, it's been up, it's been down. We'll talk about that. We've welcomed tens of thousands of new pilots into aviation, as Tom alluded to. This is a great thing. I think there's lots of new energy in the industry, but they might have different expectations or experiences coming in. We have a new generation of flight schools. Some of you are here today, which I think is fantastic. We have new, smart entrepreneurs who are trying to do flight schools differently for a modern era, which is great. That didn't exist maybe 10 years ago. We have new technology, which I'll talk about some of our technology at Sporty's. Redbird has new technology. And then the FAA is interested in 141 schools again for the first time in a long time. So you put all that together, it's kind of a big time in flight training. And I think we have the right group here to have some great conversations over the next couple days about what we want flight training to be in the years ahead. So I want to start with a little bit of a recap of where we are in the cycle, because it's been quite the cycle. So let's take a quick trip back to 2020, a year many of us want to forget but cannot. And I'm going to use airline pilot hiring as sort of a proxy because it's the most dramatic charts. And let's be honest, that has lots of trickle-down effects on our industry, right? When the airlines are hiring, that pulls through from the majors to the regionals to business aviation to flight schools, and we see that everywhere. Our flight instructors leave sooner, so we can't ignore it. Remember 2020? So here's hiring. Boom, fell off the cliff. Nobody wanted airline pilots overnight. Furlough, early retirement, hiring freeze. We were having some crazy conversations about this time last year, maybe another couple weeks ahead. I mean, are airlines going to be around in 5 years? You know, is anybody going to want to travel? Aren't we just going to do Zoom meetings? Like, who wants to meet face-to-face in 2025? I do. I'm glad we're here doing it very much. Will general aviation travel be a thing? I mean, what's the answer in 2025? Looking back in 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty. Well, fast forward all of, 18 months, and the answer to those questions was no, because look at that hiring chart take off like a rocket ship. Early retirements meant some pilots were not coming back, booming recovery, revenge travel, you name it. All of a sudden, the boom was here. And I don't know about any of you, but if you ran a flight school from about 2022 to mid-2023, about the only thing you had to do in terms of business development was answer the phone, right? Because the headlines were in the newspapers that airline pilots were getting record pay packages and there was a pilot shortage and all kinds of people were coming out of the woodwork to fly. And that was great. It really was great. I'm in no way against that. It was fantastic. It brought new energy. But for a little while there, did it kind of feel like we were just trying to hang on? We were losing flight instructors. We were getting new students in a rapid pace. But boy, it was exciting. I think we're kind of settling into a new normal now. So you notice we hit the peak there. We've dropped down. Some of this is airline deliveries and lots of technical reasons. But some of this is just a turn in the cycle. Delta has said pilot hiring is normalizing. This year will be a normal year for them. Southwest has paused hiring. They have some sort of different things going on there. Regional airlines, who used to be taking anybody with 1,500 hours in a heartbeat, now they're talking a little bit more about where you did your training and maybe did you go to one of their airline academies. And it just feels like talking to our students and flight instructors in our flight school at Sporty's, it's a little different environment. I don't think it's horrible. This is not, back to 2001, but it's different. And as I put there, not trying to be harsh, but 1,500 hours in a heartbeat is no longer enough because for a little while it was, right? In mid-2023, if you had 1,200 hours, they wanted to start talking to you. So I think we're at a new place in airline pilot hiring. We're at a new place in customers coming in the front door training. The old approach maybe doesn't work quite as well anymore. And we've had some conversations at our flight school that, you know, when the graph is going up and to the right, you can kind of get away with some bad habits. You can maybe be a little bit lazy. But when the graph comes down a little bit, that sort of exposes who's doing it the right way and who's maybe skating by. So I think we're getting to that phase, which makes this the time to think about that. I do want to point out, the flight training industry responded. We in this room and we as an industry did a phenomenal job. Look at this chart. This is from Jason Blair, who many of you know. I call him the unofficial statistician of flight training. He's got lots of good stats on his website. This is FAA knowledge tests given. So that's sort of the first step, right? We can debate knowledge tests and check rides, but you've got to take a knowledge test to become a pilot. Look at that chart. From about 2016, just exploding upward. We had one little dip there for COVID, but basically doubled in 10 years. Student pilot original certificate issuances increased 53% between 2018 and 2023. Pilots under age 30 increased by 22% in just the last 4 years. This is something I find very exciting for people that say that, well, flying's just an old man's game. We've got over 64,000 private pilots under age 30 right now in the industry. That's exciting to me. So good job, everybody. We did respond. We did train a ton of new pilots. We did create a new generation of pilots, both in general aviation and professionally. So I think that's worth taking a minute amongst all the to-do we have in our daily jobs. That's a tremendous reaction. An industry maybe not always known for reacting quickly. We sure did something right. But in a moment of self-reflection, maybe we cut a few corners along the way. And I like to think at Sporty's we didn't cut many, but I'm sure many of you didn't cut many, but I think there's a few who did. We did crank out a lot of pilots. We landed our customers a lot of airline jobs or professional pilot jobs. I think maybe we possibly focused on efficiency at a few times at the expense of the training experience. So you see here on the screen, this is the initial pass rates on FAA practical tests. It's not dramatic, but you can see that blue line there is private pilot, and it's been 3 straight years of the rate going down. Again, not dramatic, but I think there's maybe a little something going on there that in the rush to get people through, get your certificates, get your ratings, get your hours, go get hired, because the sooner you get hired, the sooner you start making money, the better your seniority. Maybe some flight schools out there were focused a little too hard on the efficiency and a little, not quite as much on actually the training we were delivering. So again, that's a reason to me for us to step back and say, now that that chart's coming down, that chart's also coming down, maybe we need to think a little bit about how we operate. And the most recent part to me is the FAA is interested in what we do again, which they're always interested in what we do, but they're maybe in a new way interested in what we do with their Part 141 modernization initiative. And I think this is a good thing. And I know that's always a dangerous thing to say, that the FAA is interested in what we do and that's a good thing, but I think we need it. I think anybody, how many people here are 141 schools? Yeah, I mean, anybody else feel like it's a little dated in how you apply to become a 141, how you maintain that? It's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork. So I do think we need an honest conversation about what a 141 school looks like in 2025. I think the FAA is going about this hopefully in a way that's productive, that involves our input. I know at Sporty's we're certainly very interested in this. But as they say, I'm going to take them at their word. Updating Part 141 regulations would ensure the training conducted at pilot schools meets the 21st century challenges of technology, safety, and advancements in teaching and learning techniques. I think that's good. And I think we have an opportunity as a flight training industry to shape what that looks like, and as a part of that, shape what a flight school is all about moving forward. So I don't want to make this whole presentation about the 141 modernization. If you would like to talk to me about this, I would love to catch up with you at the break. My colleague Don Wyckoff is here. He is leading up our efforts working with industry on the 141 modernization. We have a briefing paper. We have lots of thoughts. We've thought hard about this. I want to highlight a couple things, though. And first of all, we need the FAA to be an equal partner, not just an evaluator or an approving authority. And I really mean that. We talk a lot about, if you look at my graphic there, we talk a lot about the pilots, the flight instructors, the students, that's most of us, what happens in the airplane, and that's really important. we talk a little bit about the flight school, and that's what we're all here talking about, and that's the environment that those pilots operate in. That's also important. But that all happens within the broader environment of the FAA and the regulations they have, and maybe more importantly, the way they interpret them and enforce them. So we really do need all three parts of that working together. If we just focus on one, we're not really delivering modern flight training. So a couple of things I would highlight, and I'm sure you all have your own list. Again, I'd love to hear it. I would love to speak with one voice, because I think that's what we need to do. If we have 500 flight schools submitting 500 different comments, I worry nothing will happen. If we have a few groups submitting consolidated comments focused on a few key things, I think we have a chance to do something. So some of my highlights: less paperwork and bureaucracy, especially up front. The FAA has said they want more schools to be 141 schools. Great, but then we need to make it simpler and less complicated to get that 141 certificate. Because as anybody who's done it knows, that is not simple. Second, we need to focus less on pass rates. Right now, maintaining a 141 certificate is basically about a pass rate, right? And sure, we need our students to pass check rides. But if that is the only measure of success, what are the incentives? I would argue the incentives are aligned in a terrible way, where everybody is purely in business to pass check rides and not turn out safe pilots and not even to make happy customers. So there has to be other measures of success besides just the pass rate on a check ride. I think what we need more of is more focus on competency of instructors, the proficiency of management, the systems that flight school management uses to onboard, train, and keep those instructors engaged. I think the number one thing we need, if I could snap my fingers and get one wish, it would be more consistency across the country. We all know that the FAA, what they say in Washington is one thing, but what your local FSDO says, that's the law. And sometimes those FSDOs don't agree. Anybody ever run into that situation? Anybody have multiple flight school locations and what you get in one region isn't quite the same as the other? I always like to say, we joke at our office, the S in FSDO means standards. So let's focus on the standards a little bit more. My argument there would be a centralized office for 141. We do this with flight instructor refresher courses. We have one office in DC that authorizes and approves those FERCs. I think we could do the same for 141s. At the very least, something that standardizes it, because I think we're all chasing slightly different standards out there. I also think a wish list item for me would be make examining authority part of earning 141 approval. This disconnect between, oh, I'm 141 but don't have examining authority, I think those two should go hand in hand. If you're a 141 school, key part of that should be examining authority. So I won't derail the whole presentation with that, but I do think we should take this opportunity to think hard about what we do as 141 schools, to speak and engage with the FAA and try to get some new things in place. The FAA is not wrong. A lot of the rules for 141 are 60 years old at least, and a lot has changed. Maybe gravity has not changed, but a few other things have changed. All right, so hopefully I've convinced you now is a pretty good time for a reset, or at least an opportunity to step back and think about where we are and where we want to go. And I think we have the right group here today and this week to talk about it. So let me offer a few things when I think about a new era in flight training. What I call modern flight training. Maybe that's a loaded phrase, but I think it's a good way to sum it up. I'm going to give you my perspective, which is probably different from all of yours, but my perspective at Sporty's is we play on two sides of this. On the one hand, we have our online training courses business, which is a huge part of our business. We have over 100,000 monthly active users every month. We know what student pilots are struggling with and succeeding with. We see it on our dashboards. At the same time, we do run a flight school, both 61 and 141 with the university program. We've got 23 airplanes on the line. We are busy doing actual flight training at the airport. So from my standpoint, we talk to both our online training team. Brett Kobe is here who runs that team. We've got our flight school team. Dustin Yaki's back there who runs that team. Say what works here, what works there, and what connects between them. And that's what I want to share a little bit of what we've learned today. This is my perspective at Sporty's. Hopefully it fits a little bit with what you do. Let me start with defining modern flight training. Modern flight training, that must mean technology, right? VR headsets and all this awesome buzzword stuff. Let's play buzzword bingo, right? Absolutely not. That is not modern flight training. And I'm a little worried sometimes if you read the FAA 141 modernization, they talk a lot about new technology. And modern flight training cannot start with technology. It may be a piece of the puzzle, but that is not the answer. Now, it doesn't mean I don't like technology. I love it. At Sporty's, we have an Apple Vision Pro app. Come talk to me about how you can fly aerobatics with Patty Wagstaff with 360-degree video. It's awesome. I like it a lot. But that is not what defines modern flight training. And that is not what your students and customers are coming in the door asking for. I would guess that's not the answer. How about what I call the paint by numbers or the flight training by algorithm method, which I see a little bit at some flight schools, which is, well, it's hard to schedule check rides and it's more expensive and we've got this strict TCO we have to follow, so let's just put you in the algorithm and spit you out the other side and teach to the ACS because that's really what counts, because that's what passes the check ride, which is what keeps our 141. Or let's schedule that check ride as soon as you've done your first solo because Lord knows it's 6 months to get a DPE scheduled, and so we'll force you to be ready when you're ready. And I get it. These are real trade-offs, but that is not modern flight training. Flight training is not an algorithm. It is not paint by numbers. It is a personalized experience for each student. So that's not it either, and I would urge you to resist the temptation there. Something that my friend Bruce Williams, many of you know, instructor from up in Seattle area, he always says, the ACS is not a syllabus, and I could not agree more, so I didn't want to pass this slide without preaching from the book of Bruce Williams. The ACS is not a syllabus. The ACS is a list of standards that the applicant has to pass on a check ride, and a check ride is only one part of becoming a pilot, and those are only the minimum standards. So if the only thing we have to show for ourselves at the end of a flight training program is that the student can pass the ACS, congratulations. That's like your kid graduating from high school being able to read, but that's not what we send them to school for. We hopefully get much more out of education than just the minimum standard. So I'm sure nobody in this room does it, but please preach it. The ACS is great. You definitely ought to be a part of the flight training experience, for sure, but there's much more to that. All right, so what is it? I've told you what it's not. Here's a few things I think modern flight training is. And I'll start with a couple quick table stakes. These are things that hopefully are uncontroversial, but I think are good to review as we dive into this because it's easy to gloss over these and get caught up in paperwork or technology or other things. So table stakes for me, the first one is customer focused. And I know this is a cliche, and I don't care because it's true. Customer focused really is what business is all about. And at the end of the day, a flight school is a business. Sure, it's education, it's about safety, it's about a lot of things, but it is also a business. A customer is coming in our front door, they're paying us a lot of money, and they expect something in return. So we need to be focused on them and their goals. When they succeed, we succeed. If your business isn't set up that way, then we have a problem. Make sure that incentive is aligned, and that's something I think about a lot at Sporty's, because it's easy to chase other things that the incentive is to cut the maintenance costs or to worry about insurance or staff turnover, and those matter. I get it. I've had those headaches too. However, at the end of the day, it's about the customer succeeding, leading to your business succeeding. So focus on their goals and expectations. Listen to what they want from your company, and then create those products and services that serve them. And maybe that is your 141 private pilot program. Probably is for many of them, but it may not be for everybody. We've had students over the years come in and they just want to solo an airplane. They have no ambition of being a private pilot or an airline pilot. They just want to learn to fly. And that's great. Let's give them a product that achieves that goal and gives them a great experience. They can still be one of the 0.1% of people on Earth who have been the only person in an airplane before. There's lots of other examples like that. Rusty pilots, accelerated training, international training. I think we do need to think about the product we offer, and it's not always the standard private pilot curriculum. So customer focus, that needs to be the bedrock of any flight school. Any business, I would argue. Modern also means data guided. And I think this is something all flight schools are doing a lot better at over the last 10, 15 years. I will focus that the word I chose here is guided. Data is not what's driving the bus here. What's driving the bus is smart flight instructors and flight school managers like all of you. And data is there to guide and support our decisions, not make the decisions for us. So for example, at Sport, that could be different at every flight school. A couple things at Sporty's we've worked on hard over the last year. We want to really use our Sporty's online course as an integral part of our flight school curriculum. Not just, hey, go buy this course, good luck, hope you pass the written, but make that involved in the flight training process. Well, we can do that and hope for the best, or we can do that and try to measure the results. So we've been tweaking a lot of things in our flight school over the last year, and we've done a really good job. Our FAA knowledge test pass rate's up to 99.4%. We won't name the one person who messed up and blew our perfect rate. Checkride pass rates have increased to over 90%. And that's not by accident, that's by focusing on where were we struggling, what were the weak points, what parts of our process can be better, where do our flight instructors need better training, what are DPEs talking about now that maybe we weren't thinking enough about 3 or 4 years ago. This is a screenshot from Flight Schedule Pro. You all have your own data and dashboards, whether it's scheduling software or your TCOs or your own Excel spreadsheet. I would just suggest that you ought to have at least a little bit of data supporting those key outcomes. So maybe it's customer satisfaction. Maybe it's reviews on Google. Whatever it is for you that you think is important, I think it's good to have a couple pieces of data so that we're not purely operating on gut feel. We would never dispatch a flight that way, right? I'm going fine, feels good. No, you would say, well, show me your cross-country planning, show me your weather briefing. Have you looked at the METAR and TAF for your destination airport? Same thing. We should use a little bit of data to guide our business decisions. All right, hopefully those two are not controversial. You should be customer-focused and data-guided. What next? What I would argue is 2 words that have come up a lot at Sporty's over the last couple years are these 2 words: connected and continuous. Those are 2 big themes that I've been thinking a lot about, we've been working a lot on in the business, and I think they pull together a couple different threads for what modern flight training can be all about. So let me try to spell those out. We'll go through each of those individually. Connected, to me, it starts with connecting with your instructor. And I often talk about my flight training experience because it was the example of what not to do. For anybody that was here 3 or 4 years ago when I spoke, I walked through my great process, which was basically I showed up to the airport and my flight instructor said, let's do steep turns. And great, we went and did steep turns, and I went home and I had no syllabus and I had no home study course, and I had maybe not even a textbook. I think he threw me a Gleim book at the last possible minute to prep for my written test. And that's obviously a terrible way to learn to fly. So connected to your instructor means your instructor knows where you are as a student, and you have some expectation as a student of where you are in your progress. We've seen time and time again, AOPA years ago ran good research that shows students with a syllabus complete at a much higher rate. They have some sense of where they are in the process, they know what to expect next, they show up to their lessons prepared, they can review afterwards. The CFI can tailor their lessons to hit those weaker areas. Maybe the student is just awesome at airspace, but they're terrible at weather. Okay, we're going to spend less time talking about airspace and more time talking about weather. So I think that's a critical piece of any flight school experience. For us at Sporty's, we've worked a lot on our CFI portal, so anybody who's using our Learn to Fly course, instrument rating course, you can connect with your instructor. Instructors can sign up free, so anybody here who's not an instructor or who is an instructor and is not signed up, I'd encourage you to do that. Sportys.com/CFI. It's free. You can get access to our course for free. You can see your students' progress. You can see where they are in their home study. You can see what they're struggling with, what they're doing well at. You can also get lots of free resources there as well. So it's a great resource for the CFI, but we're doing it because we know the results matter. That when the instructor is prepared, it really does lead to a lot of better training outcomes. And by the way, that continuity, because instructors do leave, right? It happens. Instructor gets a job, and this happened to me in my flight training, and I walked in and I had a new instructor the next day, and he said, "Where you at?" And I didn't really know because I didn't have a syllabus. Well, with something like this, you know exactly where you are. You can say, well, I got this far, and we were coming up on this next step in the lesson. So I believe being connected with your instructor is critical, and that doesn't just mean what you're doing in the airplane, that means your home study as well, which is why we believe so strongly in this CFI portal. Second piece is connected to your flight lessons, and this is something we just launched at Sporty's in the last month. We announced a partnership with Flight Schedule Pro. 1,300 flight schools are using Flight Schedule Pro. Probably many of you are using Flight Schedule Pro. You can now fully integrate your Sporty's home study course with Flight Schedule Pro. And I don't want to steal too much thunder from Brett. He's going to give a breakout on this today, I think at 3 o'clock in the mezzanine, so definitely check that out for all the details. But a couple of highlights here why we're excited about this. This really does kind of connect the pieces together. We talked about the student, and we talked about the instructor, and we connect them with our CFI portal. The third leg of that stool is the flight school, and this is finally the piece we can pull in with the Flight Schedule Pro integration. We've got flight schools connected. So what does that mean? What that means is a flight school can sell a Sporty's course directly from Flight Schedule Pro. So no more calling us, ordering up codes and sticking them on a shelf or whatever. Student walks in, they want to enroll in a course, you can enroll them and you can sell them a course right there and distribute it. That's great. By the way, flight schools can make money doing that. More importantly, I think, than the money, though, is it connects that home study, the flight lessons, the training course outline. It standardizes things. It keeps all of your students and instructors together. You can track progress right in Flight Schedule Pro. You can see, where is Joe Smith in his training? Did he complete that video lesson? Is he prepared for the flight lesson that's coming up today? I think the critical part there is that you can monitor student progress, and you can really get a sense of who is at risk of maybe not succeeding here. And we've talked at previous conferences here about the dropout rate in flight training. I hear 80% sometimes. Maybe that's high. At Sporty's, it's about 5%. Dropouts are pretty rare for us. And that's because, A, we give them the support with the home study course, and B, we give them the connective piece here with all of this. But C, we can monitor and see if something's going wrong. You don't have to wait for, hey, you know, Bill hasn't showed up in like 3 months. I wonder if he dropped out. And you've got some data here that you can monitor and see who's falling behind, and you can intervene early. So maybe somebody just had a bad week and they'll catch up, but maybe not. Maybe there's something more important. Maybe there's a flight instructor-student fit that's not going well. Maybe they're struggling with their home study and they need a little extra tutoring. Whatever it might be, I think this is a really critical piece for keeping the flight school in the loop. You're all busy running flight schools. You probably do not have a full-time data analyst position at your flight school, I'm going to guess. But I think this gives you the tools that in an hour or two a week you can get some good insights. The last piece, for 141 schools, you can get credit towards 20 hours of ground training as a part of this, which doesn't hurt, because probably most of you don't really want to teach ground school in 2025. I don't think you should, honestly. I think you can standardize by doing it with a home study course like Sporty's. So we're really excited about this Flight Schedule Pro partnership. Again, you can see our breakout this afternoon for more details on that. All right, the last piece has nothing to do with Sporty's. I'm not going to try to sell you a course or read your press release. This is about community. And this is one of the most overlooked pieces in flight training. And hey, we have room to improve at Sporty's too. It's not like we're perfect. But personal connections matter. We know this from research. We know this from talking to customers. We know this from surveys. A big reason people join the aviation community is the community. They don't just want a piece of paper with their license number on it. They want to feel like they're joining something. I think that's especially true these days when so many people live so much of their lives online. Community matters. It matters even if you're going to go on and be an airline pilot, because you probably want to join some community of airline pilots. So I think you should think about ways you can at least sow the seeds for this. You don't have to play matchmaker. You don't have to have speed dating at your flight school. But I do think you should be thinking about ways you can build community into what you do as a flight school. Maybe that's simple stuff like flyouts or seminars, events, have a cookout on a Saturday afternoon. We've been doing that for decades at Sporty's. We roll the grill out on Saturdays and cook hot dogs, and you'd be shocked at how many people will show up for free food to swap flying stories. It's a great way to build those informal connections. Mentoring and new pilot cohorts. I've seen some schools do really good stuff with this, where every new student gets kind of a mentor, or at least a guide or another student. I think those are great ideas. It depends on what your flight school is doing, but I really do think you should be thinking about ways to build that community, because it's not enough for them just to show up at the airport, do their lesson, do a debriefing, go home and feel like they did something. They want to feel like they made some connection, they know some people. Because, by the way, if they struggle, that's the people they're going to reach out to. They're probably not going to automatically call up the chief flight instructor and say, hey, I think this flight instructor I'm flying with is a jerk. They're probably going to ask an informal connection, a colleague that they're training with, or another flight instructor they met at an event, and say, hey, I'm kind of struggling. Is this normal, or is there something going on here? So that is not just charity to build community. I think that builds happier customers, and it reduces your dropout rate. By the way, it's good marketing. It spreads word of mouth. If you have happy customers who are showing up to events like this or out in the community, it's the most valuable marketing you can get. All right, so that's the connected piece. Let me talk about the continuous piece here, because I think they really go hand in hand here. It's connected without being continuous is a start, but doesn't really lead to results. So it's not going to shock you to hear, I think continuous step one is good home training. Again, if your students are not doing something at home to show up prepared for their lessons, you're really missing an opportunity. And that should be more than just go watch some YouTube videos or read a textbook. It needs to be more structured than that. This is one of my absolute soapbox topics. I think flight training is about so much more than the time in the left seat. It's not about the hours you put in your logbook. So much learning goes on away from the airport. So if you use the Sporty's course, great. If you don't, that's okay. Just do something. Because I think a lot of times we focus so much about the flight training. How many hours do you have? You know, have you soloed? But there's so much to learn about flying that does not happen in the airplane. So for us, we can boil that down to a couple simple features. One is we think our courses should be available everywhere. So that's why we have built our courses for online courses in web browsers, iPad, iPhone, Android, Apple TV, CarPlay, you name it, we're going to build our app to work on that. And that's just so that students can learn anywhere. We know that students are busy. They always seem to have their phone with them, so let's give them a chance. I could look at TikTok or I could get 10 minutes of training done. Well, they may go for TikTok, but let's at least give them the chance to make the right decision. So that's why we feel strongly about that. The second part we built recently is some new AI features. And okay, buzzword alert, AI. But I think we built some useful features here because it builds on this continuous learning at home theme, which is it's Saturday night, it's 10 o'clock. My flight instructor is not available. And I have a question, and I really don't understand this whole VORs thing because who in the heck invented VORs? Well, we want to be able to give some good answers that doesn't send the student to YouTube or even just ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is pretty good, but I've got some great wrong answers from it over the years. Ask it how to do a steep turn sometime, you may be shocked. So what we built is what we call aviation intelligence, which is using new AI tools but trained on the right data and crafted in the right way so that you're getting real answers, not just what somebody wrote on the internet 3 years ago and ChatGPT found, but what we know is true, what we know is in our courses, whether that's our videos, our questions, FA manuals. So this has been a really exciting feature. We rolled this out last fall. We have a couple different features. ChatDPE is our virtual pilot examiner. You can do a mock oral exam with it. ChatDPE is tough, but it's fair, and it's a great way to prepare. We also have Chat FAR, which is a great way to learn your regulations, because if you haven't noticed, the FARs are not always written in the most understandable way. And so we offer both a quick summary of that, but also examples for how to apply those regulations. And you can ask a question. So what are the regulations for VFR weather minima at night in Class E airspace? Ask Chat FAR, you're going to get a good answer. And again, it's not to be a gimmick. It's not to have an AI buzzword on the screen. It's to offer that continuous learning so you can get a good answer no matter where you are. Because, again, we see it in our dashboards. People are not doing flight training 9 to 5. They are doing this at all kinds of hours, and we want to offer them the opportunity to learn whenever and wherever they are. The second piece, it's some news we announced last month, was the acquisition of Pilot Workshops. And the whole reason for us getting involved in this is continuous learning beyond the checkride. And so now I know here I'm going beyond just that FAA Part 141 and the pass rate, but this gets to that customer satisfaction and that business relationship and being customer focused. Because the customer does not walk in our flight school and say, I want to pass a checkride. They walk in our flight school and they say, I want to be a pilot. And embedded in that is I want to fly, and I want to feel safe, and I want my family to feel safe and want to fly with me. And that's really, really important, because I see all too often, typically the pilot will get their private and their instrument rating, and they pass their check ride, and then they're terrified to use it. Anybody ever seen these pilots? They've invested thousands of dollars. They even got an instrument rating, and you want to say, go out there and do it. Go live the life of a pilot, and they're afraid to. And they really don't know how to use those certificates and ratings they've earned. And I think that's an absolute tragedy. So this is part of what we're trying to address with Pilot Workshops, where we're really getting focused on proficiency. It's not about a check ride. It's not even about a flight review or an IPC. It's about building skills and confidence to go out there in the aviation system and fly and use those certificates and ratings. So Pilot Workshops has a phenomenal group of experts. One of them sitting right over here who introduced me, shameless plug. But they have a really great program. The best thing about Pilot Workshops, they have this IFR and VFR Mastery, which is a monthly interactive scenario. Some of you may be subscribers to this. It's a great way to think about the gray areas. And whether you're using Pilot Workshops or not, I would encourage you to teach this mindset with your students, because so many things in aviation are not black and white. We always talk about go, no go. It's rarely that simple, right? Most of the time it's a gray area. It's, well, you know, we could go, or we could go later, or we could go this way, or we could go in this airplane, or with this flight instructor in the right seat. And I think having those conversations about the gray areas and teaching all of our customers to think that way is really, really important. We think pilot workshops is a great way to do that, but whatever you're using, make it more than about the ACS. Teach students how to think. Teach pilots how to use their certificates, and teach that habit of continuous learning. It should not be, yay, I passed my check ride, I'm done. I'll never have to study again. It should be, yay, I passed my check ride, and that's just the first phase of my training. My last one, again, has nothing to do with Sporties, but I think another interesting chart. So you see up here, it's a little bit hard to read up there maybe, but focus on the green line there. The green line is the percentage of flight instructors who are under age 30. Does anybody notice a trend? Right, it shot up during this pilot training boom. And that's not bad. I am not here to bash young instructors at all. Some of our very best instructors are young and enthusiastic and work incredibly hard and connect with students better because they're younger. So there's no problem with this. But I do think we do need to have a bigger conversation about how we train our flight instructors after they earn that certificate. We've had some conversations at our flight school about mentoring new instructors, getting some tips from somebody who's been on the line for a while, not just setting them off, not even just doing onboarding, but really having some ongoing part of learning that's not just about our students in the flight school, but also about our flight instructors. And you'll note here, an experienced instructor does not have to be a 25,000-hour ATP who flies for the airlines. An experienced instructor could be somebody with 1,000 hours who's been instructing for a few years. They have lots to teach a brand new instructor about the questions you're going to get, or what a good lesson looks like, or how to have awkward conversations with your flight students. So I would encourage you to really think hard about ways to build mentoring into your flight school, not just of your customers, but also your flight instructors. Most of them, I would guess, want some form of mentoring, but they're probably afraid to ask. And this, again, is good at building a habit of continuous learning. So think about your instructor corps. Think about who you have that are maybe a little more experienced that can help those less experienced ones. All right, so summing up a few things here, hopefully a few of these connected. I think a modern flight school in 2025 has at least these 4 focus areas. They're student-centered because they care about their students, because that's why we're in business. And so they listen to them. They ask questions. They do surveys. They want to focus on them. They're data-guided. So they look at the numbers and decide if what they're doing is working or not. They try something, they evaluate it, and they adjust. They're connected. They connect the home study with the flight instructor and the airport community, so the student feels like they're not on an island, but they feel like they're somewhere where they can really be connected. And then finally, continuous. We want to build proficiency as a habit, not a one-time event. Proficiency is not a check ride. It's not a biennial thing. It's an ongoing process. It's a way of life. Pilots pursue excellence. I think that's what we all want from our pilots that we're training. Now, the good news is these are not expensive. I have not talked about buying brand new airplanes or using some fancy new technology that costs a lot of money. Just as some examples here, student-centered. As I said, most of that is just asking questions and listening. Ride along on a flight lesson, sit during a debrief, talk to your new customers as they walk in the door, understand what are their goals. Don't say necessarily, hey, here's our menu, what do you want to order? Start with, what are your goals and expectations? What do you want to get out of this? That's a great way, if you listen with an open mind, to stay student-centered. Data guided, again, use whatever you have. If you want to go add some new technology, great. You can use business intelligence tools. I don't think you need it, honestly. I think we're all using some form of data somewhere we can use better, whether that's the Sporty's flight instructor portal, that's Flight Schedule Pro, or the scheduling process you're using, again, your spreadsheets. Even at the end of the year profit and loss statement, there is some data there to guide your decisions to say, how are we doing? Connected, a lot of this is taking advantage of the tools your students are already using. Some of them may be using home study courses already. Ask them. Take advantage of it. Community events do not have to be expensive. A lot of times that's just rolling out the welcome mat, providing the space. And then continuous, this one, again, using the resources you have, older CFIs. I also think it's worth thinking about maybe there is a menu item for a flight school which is more proficiency focused, which is less, I need a flight review. And maybe it's more of, I want some type of proficiency process that I can maybe do every couple of months, or I want to do some ground sessions even if it's not an official BFR. Goodness. My last point I want to leave you with is to try to change the mindset we have and the image we use when we talk about flight training, because so often I see this, and we present it as a pathway, right? Well, I want to be a pilot. Great. Private, instrument, commercial, multi-engine, CFI, check, 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 and you're moving down the path, and boy, when you're done, you never have to go back and take that god-awful instrument rating checkride ever again. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to start talking more about habits and loops and a continuous thing. You are never done. You are never done. I have never met a good pilot who has the mentality that they walked a pathway and they're done. The best pilots are all about their habits, their routines, a commitment to excellence, a commitment to safety, and doing it the right way. So this is what I'd like to see us promote when students come in the door when we talk about aviation is welcome to a whole new lifestyle. This is not an event. We're not going to go get scuba certified on vacation and check it off. We're going to sign up for something that's going to be a new way of us living. We're going to learn to fly, and yeah, we're going to add ratings, but we're also going to focus on building skills. And maybe you're going to get a flight instructor certificate and give back, and that's really, really important. But we're also going to stay proficient, and we're going to keep going round and round and round as long as we're flying. The last part I have is good news for you. We can do this, I think. So I have a good friend who is a school teacher and has been for 25 years, and she's an amazing woman, but her job is hard. And anybody here who's ever been a teacher, I think, can appreciate that. Part of the problem is just the scale. If we want to do something about general education in America, well, you've got 4 million teachers. You've got 50 states that all have their idea of what it looks like to do good education. Aviation, by comparison, it's easy. Again, we have one national standard, which I'd like to get a little more standard, but we do have one national standard. We all share the same FARs. We all share the same ACS. That's a great place to start. At the end of the day, there's less than 24,000 flight instructors who signed off anybody for a check ride last year. And less than 8,000 of those signed off 5 or more. So there's really about 10,000 flight instructors out there really doing a lot of active flight instruction. That's not a whole lot of people. We need to all work together to deliver the best possible flight training. That seems very achievable. Less than 2,000 flight schools in the US, probably less than 1,000 who are really doing any significant volume of training. So maybe that sounds like we have a small industry, but I choose to see the glass half full there and see that we have an opportunity really to make an impact. We can talk about a new way to run a flight school. We can change how we do 141 certification and approvals with the FAA. We can deliver better flight training experiences for all of our customers because what we do is so important. We are building the next generation of pilots. We are building the next generation of the aviation industry. I know it's something we all care about. It's why we're here. It's probably why we're in aviation in the first place. Nobody joined this industry to make $1 million. We do it because we love it. So if we focus on a few of these things, I think we can continue to turn out not just safe pilots, but really enthusiastic ones that will go tell all their friends and neighbors about it and help our industry grow. Thank you very much. I'll be hanging out at the break. Be happy to talk about Sporty stuff, 141 modernization, anything you'd like to talk about. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Don.